All right, I think we're live now. Can you guys hear me all right? Good morning all. Hola Renzo, saludos desde Perú. How's everyone going today? It's morning here in Australia, so good morning or good night, good afternoon. Looks like a pretty good turnout today, so we can get started straight away. I'm just gonna show you a few things before we get started. I'm just sorting out here the chat so I can see what you guys are up to. All right. So everything's good. Can you hear me all right? Can you see me fine? There's a fan here at the back, so if it is too noisy, let me know and I'll turn it off. But I think we're getting ready to start. So this is the little rally card, low poly card that we worked on last week, and I went ahead after the stream and I added a couple more things, like this sort of grill here at the back, this protection bumper thing, the exhaust, and a couple more things. I can't remember what exactly. The little logo here in the front. But that's about it really. Just fine tune some shapes, but it's exactly the same thing as what we did last week. So the idea with this stream is to finish this up and just have another little contained little scene that we can call finished, and as well as you know, showing you all the different techniques that I can come up with using the C modular tool and a few other bits and pieces, like Nanomesh. I think I'm gonna use maybe Polypaint, and obviously Polypaint. That's the whole point of this session today, and a few more things, but we'll see along the way how we go and what else I can show you. Alright, so if anyone has any questions during the stream, please feel free to just type them in the chat. I have it right in front of me so I can have a look at it. A little muffled, but it's fine. Your vid seems stuttery. Alright, maybe if I just get closer. Let me know if this is a little bit better in terms of the audio. The video, I have no idea why it might be. Maybe it's just the internet connection. We'll see how we go. Anyway, so like I said, if you have any questions at all, just put them in the chat. I'll try to keep an eye on that and answer them as I go, so that I can answer specific questions about the workflow. If you have a question about something that I'm doing specifically on the stream, that would be good as well, so that I can answer for everyone. But let's go ahead and get started. So I have the car here. Like I said, it's exactly the same thing as we did last time with a few extra bits. And I went ahead and I imported a, let me just bring it up, a spotlight with a bunch of like little graphics, the ZBrush Guides logo, the ZBrush Live logo, some 19 number as well, some, I don't know, just like random more abstract stuff that we can use. And I'm gonna use this one to project into the car to generate that nice sort of pattern and make it look more like a rally car. So that is just a spotlight, and I put all these into a black image. So let me just show you that. So this is the spotlight control. So if I go to the intensity and I just move that one back to its original position, you'll see it's just a black background image. And because ZBrush interprets black as being transparent, you can just take the intensity and just dial it down like that, like so, and now you have a transparent image that you can use, you know, to project these things, and it's only gonna pick up the color, not the black color or the bright color that you have here, anything but the black really. Okay, so that's the only setup that I've done so far. Again, to access this spotlight, you can hold Shift Z, and that brings the spotlight. And if you want to bring in the control, once you're in this mode, you can press Z, and that's gonna bring out these this control that allows you to move, rotate, and all those sort of things. So really handy tool. I'm gonna hold Shift Z to go back. And the first thing that I need to do is set up these cars so that we can start painting, right? Because right now we're gonna use Polypaint, and right now this is just very low poly. Let me just turn on Polyframe, so like the main body of the car. So we're not gonna get a lot of traction here if we just start Polypainting as it is. Another thing that I forgot to mention that I did. Let me just bring in the polygroups of palette, and I'm gonna go into solo mode. So this one right here, before it was kind of like a mess in terms of the polygroup, so I'm just gonna create a single polygroup, and I went through all of the subtools and I just generated polygroups that I can use to isolate areas, and that's gonna be really handy when we start polypainting. For this, in this case, you can use something like group by normals, and because we're using a very low poly mesh, it should be pretty consistent. So you just click polygroups by normals. They're just gonna ZBrush is gonna create a group per set of normals. So you'll see this side of the car is almost facing in the same direction. That's why I got the same polygroup. Whereas something like inside here, the window, they're facing in different directions. So it's like it's gonna be a different polygroup. Let me bring in my trusted Epic pen, and that'll be handy to show you some stuff. Alright, just gonna leave it there. Alright, so with that out of the way, let's go ahead and fine-tune this polygrouping, because like I said, there's some areas that might not be great. So I'm gonna hold Control and Shift, and also I'm gonna turn double so I can see behind. Let's invert that, and I'm gonna hide the obvious polygroups, these ones, and probably the windows as well. Alright, let me undo that. Oops. So I want to keep a single polygroup for this frame of the window. So let's hide this bit as well, and also let's turn perspective off. That one as well, and let's go group visible or auto group. Well, auto group in this case will group anything that doesn't have continuity in topology. Let's click not auto group, group visible. Where am I? Yeah, group visible. There's a few other ones that are like loose here, so I'm gonna try to target those first. Alright, this is one of the tricky bits about working with such a low poly geometry, that it's sometimes hard to isolate certain areas, like this polygroup right here. So what I'm gonna show you is just another way that we can go about it, just because this might be too hard to just isolate them. Maybe this is better. Let's have a look. Group visible. We still have these two here. So there's an easier way to do it, or a more manual way to do it, and that is with the Z modeler. So I'm going to select the Z modeler, and I'm going to hover any of the faces, press spacebar, select polygroup as my target action, as my action, and the target I'm just going to leave it as a single poly, because what I'll do is turn on symmetry, and I can hold the Alt key, and I'm just going to target those polygroups, or these faces, to assign a polygroup really. Alright, so that's pretty much what I want to do. Select those, maybe this one as well. Maybe that should be its own polygroup as well. And here in the front, so it's more manual, but because we have such a low poly count, it's not that big of a deal. And now we can just click, and ZBrush will assign a polygroup to anything that we just tagged. Alright, so that is it. Maybe we can do the same thing here for this inner part. So I'm gonna just tag these polygroups of faces, polygon faces. Click once, and there we go. And we are ready to start. Maybe one more. Just gonna isolate these headlights, these brake lights really. Invert that. And let's do the same thing here. I don't know why I didn't pick it up. Alright, I'm gonna get closer to make sure that I'm getting all these polygroups. Alrighty, and the other side as well. So I think we got them all. Yep, so let's undo that, invert that, and let's group visible. So we have now this as it is, as a different polygroup. And I think we are ready to start. So I'm not gonna go this. I'm not gonna do the same thing for the rest of the subtools because this is just boring to watch. So let's go ahead and start with polypainting. So I'm gonna start by turning off my polyframe, and I'm gonna go into solo mode again. And obviously, if we start subdividing, let me just bring in maybe the clay builder brush. I'm gonna duplicate this brush before I do anything to it, and I'm gonna turn off CAD and turn on RGB so that we can paint, which is the clay builder brush. I like this brush to paint because it's just very sharp strokes, and I think that would work fine for what we're doing. So let me just move around. By the way, if you didn't know that you can rotate or not rotate, scroll through the different menus that you have in your custom UI, it's a game changer thing. You can do that with anything really. So you can have a very long UI. You can do that with any spot here, like that. So in order to do that, this is like a completely unrelated stuff. But if you want to do that, just hold Control, and in any empty space, that's why I left these sort of gaps in between my UI. So that's the intention, that I can just select this empty area and just grab it with the Control. So Control, click and drag allows you to move that part of the UI. So that's pretty handy. Alright, so if I were to just start polypainting right now, we're gonna get a pretty horrible result because we don't have enough geometry. So obviously what we can do is go ahead and subdivide it, but then the problem is that we're subdividing the entire mesh, and it's also smoothing it, right? So we're gonna get lots more of points that we can paint, but it's gonna destroy that polygon, very low poly look and feel that I'm going for this car. So the easiest way to go about it, one way would be to just crease everything and then subdivide. But the easiest way really to maintain the entire sort of like boxy look is to turn off this Subdivide Smooth modifier, which for you guys should be under the geometry palette, just next to it, next to the divide button. If you turn it off and you subdivide, have a look at the polygon count, or the points, the point count here. As I divide, you'll see that it actually gets divided, but the shape doesn't change because it's not subdividing anything since this is turned off. So I'm just gonna do this a couple times. Let's see, 1 million seems to be okay. 1 million points. I'm gonna try this again. Alright, so I think we can go a little bit sharper, but yeah, let's do one more time actually. So we now have 5 million polygons. That should give us a pretty decent stroke, or pretty decent resolution to do the stroke. Alright, so I'm happy with that. Let's go ahead and get started by painting the entire car, or this entire body of the car, maybe like a very dark blue color. Alright, so it's gonna be a little bit hard to see the rest, but hopefully it's not too bad. So I'm gonna click Fill Object, and because I have the RGB intensity to 100 here, then ZBrush is gonna fill the entire model 100% with this color. If you have this RGB intensity to a lower value, it's just gonna do it incrementally. It's like adding opacities on top of it. So it's pretty handy if you're doing something like a skin, or just painting something like a humanoid character or a creature. But in this case, we just want a flat color. Alright, so the next thing is holding Control and Shift, and I'm gonna isolate the window. I should have just, let me turn on polyframe. Maybe it's better to assign a single polygroup to all these faces. Alright, so first what I need to do, because this is sharing the same polygroup, but it's not sharing the same sort of topology right now, or it's not connected, what we can do is auto group. So auto group all, and now we can hide this bit, and now we can group visible. Alright, so now it's going to be easier to select these windows to do the polypaint. So this is going to be pretty straightforward. I'm just going to select a very black, dark color, pure black, fill object, and also I'm going to hold Control and click somewhere in the canvas, and that's gonna mask everything that is visible. Bring back the car or the rest of it, and we have this masked. And let's go ahead and turn off polyframe and maybe solo as well, so that we can see exactly how what are the visible parts of this mesh. So now that we have this, let's go ahead and bring in the spotlight. I don't have the spotlight set up in my remote control here for the Cintiq, so I'm just gonna have to do it with the keyboard. So I don't know what you guys think, but I think I'm gonna go for a set of stripes like these orange ones around, like across the model. So that might be a way to do it. Let's go ahead and try that first. See what that gives us. So I'm going to try to line up, maybe just use the opacity tool so we can reduce the opacity and see a little bit better the car. So I'm going to try to target, I don't know, I'm not sure how to go about this one, but I think I'm going to try to follow this angle of the window here, and I'm going to try to create the stripes or these design of the car, trying to following this angle so that it matches. So let's try that out. I'm gonna rotate based on this pivot point. Alrighty, and okay, something like that. Alright, and now in order to start painting, just need to select paint, which is this first on the left, or the first one on the left. And also let's make sure that we have symmetry enabled. We do, and we're gonna start painting these lines in here. Okay, and remember that the rest of the image is pretty much, well, it's transparent because we're using a black color, so it is not too bad. Alright, so there you have it. That's the first pass. I'm seeing a lot of I'm thinking that we're gonna need some more geometry, but also I think it has to do with the resolution of the image that I'm using as well. So let me just double check. Now we definitely need more resolution here. So let me just go back. I'm gonna undo that, and this is gonna get a little bit too heavy, I think, because we have already 5 million polygons. So one thing we could do is do Polypaint HD, but I don't feel like doing that. So we could potentially retopologize and do it again. I just want to keep it simple, so let's try doing it again. And I think part of the problem obviously is because we have these diagonal lines. So let's try to come up with a design that is more, horizontal and vertical. It's not going to look as cool, but it's going to save us that sort of problem of the resolution here. It's not, I mean, it's a resolution problem, but it's also because of the diagonals. It's hard to define those when we don't have enough geometry. But you know what? It's gonna be so small that might as well just do it like that. It's not gonna be a big problem. So I'm trying to align this design a little bit better. Scale it up a bit. All right, let's do it again. And I think this part we can just cover it with the number as well. So let's double check that it is happening in both sides. That's good. And we can go ahead and turn off or turn on solo, and I'm going to select the same color just by clicking from this swatch and dragging into this orange color, and I'm just going to paint the rest of this area. So I'm just going to use this line as a divider, kind of. so we can split the car color into or in half. Alright, I'm not gonna worry too much about the bottom because you won't be able to see it. Alright, and let's go ahead and paint this bit as well. And remember that we use masking to protect the windows, that's why I'm not affecting them with the poly paint. Cool, so that's it. We can go ahead and fine tune these bits, just selecting the color and kind of like erasing that. So we have the first pass done. Let's go ahead and bring in the spotlight. Before that, actually, let's get closer so you guys can see a little bit better. And I'm thinking that we can use maybe some white color actually, or let's use this other. I'm gonna bring the solo. Let's go ahead and place this somewhere around here. I'm gonna try to use this yellow line to add a bit of extra, extra design or change in color here. Okay, maybe there it looks good. Going to solo mode so we can project this fully, and we can just go ahead and fine tune this area here. Oops. Make sure I select the right color, and let's try that again. Alright, so we have this first pass of this rally car. I don't know how it's gonna end up looking at the end. I just wanted to make it very busy and play around with the different designs that I have in that spotlight so that it really looks like a rally car. It's gonna look a little bit better when we actually place things like the logos and stuff. It's gonna make it really look like a sponsored car. Let me just check the chat. Alright, cool. Nothing, no questions so far. All good. Saludos de Guatemala. Perfect. Alrighty. So the next one, I actually want to have maybe the top and the front kind of like white. So I'm gonna bring in the solo mode again, get out of solo mode, and I think I want to keep the bumper white with a bit of orange as well. I'm just gonna try to balance these colors. So let's go ahead and move to the jumper. I haven't finished with the body, but I want to have a good sense of how everything interacts and works with each other. So I'm going to hold the Alt key, select the bumper, and do the same thing that I did for the car. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off this smooth subdivide and subdivide a few times. Maybe 1 million polygons, 4 million polygons would be plenty. And I'm going to select a white color and fill the object. Alright, so now that I have that, now that this is white, you know what, I actually think that maybe we can go ahead and fill everything, or fill every subtool with its basic color, and then we can come back and fine tune the decoration of the car. So that might be a better way to go about it actually. So I'm going to select the mirrors, and I'm going to select, maybe the mirrors should be the same dark color, so fill object, except these ones here. So if I go into polyframe, I can isolate these, right, and I can fill these with slightly grayish color. That's fine. Alright, so that we can differentiate the mirror from the actual, not that you're gonna see it, but it's good to have it there. This little sunroof, it's not a sunroof, what is it, this thing at the top of the windshield, you know what I'm talking about. I'm gonna make this white as well, or maybe we can go for the orange. Why not? Fill object, and let's go ahead and select this ventilation for the engine. Like I said in the previous stream, I don't know a lot about cars, so the way that I name them, or these parts, the way that I name the parts is pretty basic. So this is just a duct to ventilate the engine, I guess. So let's go ahead and make this, probably orange will look okay. Let's see if a white one. I think orange looks fine. Let's fill that object as well. and the inside would be more like a dark, like black color. Let's just isolate that, fill object with black, and there we go. Let's go ahead and do the wheels. Remember that for the wheels and the tires we are using array mesh. So we're just using one to duplicate it around and create the 4 wheels. So we only need to actually paint one. So let's go ahead and go into polyframe, and I'm just gonna select. We're gonna select everything, and I'm gonna paint it this yellow color. I'm gonna click fill object, and then I'm gonna isolate just the tire itself, and I'm gonna paint this obviously maybe not fully black, maybe just a very dark gray. Fill object. Alright, get out of polyframe, and there we go. So we have that sorted. Maybe this inside should actually be a dark color as well, so I'm gonna isolate that, invert it. I'm gonna try to select these faces here. Alright, let me bring in the polyframe because I don't know which ones I'm selecting. So I'm gonna hide this. I think these ones are connected. Alright, so one thing we can do is just polygroup auto group, and that way we can just easily isolate that. I'm gonna select this color for the tire, fill object, bring everything back, and now it just makes more sense. Alright, get out of this polyframe, and we're getting there, at least with this first pass. Let's go ahead and select this as well, this part, and I think that one could be just a black color or a slightly dark gray color, or maybe the white one as well. We can use that as a place to put the logos and the sponsors. I'm not sure. Maybe white is too contrasty. Let's just go for the same color here. Fill object. The only thing I want to do is make sure that I isolate this. So let's go into solo mode. I want to hold Control and Shift, invert that selection. So I'm just going to isolate some of these areas, and I'm just going to leave the tubes by themselves. Alright, and let's go ahead and select a lighter gray. Okay, so that makes more sense again. And I'm going to do the same thing for this one here. I'm going to fill object with the same gray. For this exhaust here, I'm going to go for a lighter gray. Fill object. And these panels here at the back, that's another thing I did after the stream, but there's just like a couple of boxes duplicated to create this sort of paneling here. This one, maybe this one should be white. Let's go ahead and fill object, and just a few more to go. Let's select this area here. I'm gonna solo mode, and this one I think should be dark black just for these. This is going to be the number plate, but these two could be, we can mask this one out and make them red. Fill object, and these two on the side, actually everything but these two on each corner should be kind of like a yellow or orange one. Let's see how that looks. Go back from solo. Alright, I think that makes sense. And let's go ahead and do the same thing here for the front. So for the front, actually this one first. So let's select the antenna. I'm gonna make that a gray color. And as I move colors around, I only see this one changing. So these are the only part of the card that we haven't assigned a base color. So let's go ahead and do that first. And hopefully after this setup process we can start doing something a little bit more fun. Let's go ahead and select this part, go into solo mode, and I'm gonna isolate just this front part and make a full black color so that we have more contrast. And let's select now the grid here, and that's gonna be a light gray maybe. Fill object. The logo here is gonna be probably maybe the orange one. Fill object. And the lights here, those ones are individual pieces, so that's gonna be easier. Let's just select a yellowish color, something like that would be fine, and fill object. And then we are left with just these bits. and also these ones at the bottom. So these ones are the kind of the subtools that are holding everything together. Let's go ahead and select black for it, as well as this one here, fill object, and I think we are pretty much ready to go. I'm gonna select the headlights, and I'm gonna go into solo mode, bring in polyframe, and I want to separate these from, you know, the actual light from the kind of like the what is it, the body of it. So the best way, or the easiest way again, is using the C modeler. So I'm gonna bring that BZM, alright, and I'm gonna make sure that I have symmetry enabled, and I'm gonna hold the Alt key and target all these polygons so that we can assign a specific polygroup. And all of these, everything that I'm doing so far is kind of like setting it up, right? We haven't done anything too extraordinary and anything particularly interesting yet. Let's hover over spacebar, make sure polygroup is enabled, and as you click with assigning polygroups, you can also, without letting go of the click, you can hold the Alt key, and that will cycle through different colors. Just so you know, it's an easy way to isolate it and generate the different polygroups that you want. Let's go back to the custom brush that we just made, the clay builder brush for painting, and I'm gonna isolate these ones. Maybe go for a bright yellow light or light color, fill object, invert that selection, and I'm gonna select a black color for the headlines. Alright, I'm going to also go back and do that again. Alright, so that is pretty much it. Alright, so we have the basis. I'm gonna do a quick save. We have this first pass of Polypaint assigned to all of the subtools. Currently only the body of the car and the, I forgot already, the fender. Oh yeah, this fender here around the at the bottom and around the car has been subdivided, same as like the body. So if we want to add more Polypaint and more details to other areas, we'll have to do the same thing. Obviously we have to subdivide it. Alright, so I'm gonna switch, and oh, that's better. I think we were having a look at the model with the madcap gray, so I just changed to the skin shading, or skin shade 4, and that's gonna be easy for you guys to see the details. Alright, so now let's go ahead and paint maybe this fender thing, and I'm gonna add like an orange lines here, and maybe the green one that I brought from the spotlight. So let's make sure that we have symmetry enabled, and I'm gonna bring in the spotlight. You can rotate and hold in shift and it will snap, or the image will snap. Let's go ahead and try to position this green line kind of like all around it. I'm just gonna leave a space here at the bottom because that's gonna be the orange bit that I'm gonna paint. I think this one, something like that, should be fine. Just looking at it. Alright, and let's go ahead and start painting that as well. We can go into solo mode, and that way we don't have any interference of the other meshes. Okay, so that's good. Let's do the same thing, but this time I'm gonna use, oops, I'm gonna use this other bit, the orange one. And you can do these type of things just by painting, but having these as separate images with straight lines, it just makes it easier because you don't have to be so careful. Alright, let's paint that one as well. And let's bring back solo mode and see how that's looking. Alright, a little bit, I mean, I'm within the color palette, I think, but it's not looking too bad. I think I'm happy with this. I just want to add a little bit of this white color here at the top so that it also looks part of the same. So I'm going to select the body of the car, and I'm going to probably just mask, oops, mask, let me just select the mask lasso. I'm going to mask everything but that area. Let's see if that works. I'm going to bring in polygroup. Actually, it's just going to be easy if I just select this top part and invert the selection and also hide this back. Alright, so I'm going to mask now, and that is the reason you do polygrouping, really. And now we have only this section at the top and at the back without the mask. Alright, so we can paint this one manually, actually. So let's just select a white color, and I'm going to do like a more organic painting of this. Might not look great, but we'll see how we go. Going to solo mode. Not necessarily convinced that this is gonna look good with the more sharp lines that we have with the rest of the design. So let's just try to clean that up. If you guys have any idea for the design of this car, let me know, because yeah, I'm speedballing here. Don't have a reference or anything to follow, but that's kind of like the fun stuff as well. Alright, again, I don't like that these are very sharp lines and sharp angles. Doesn't really go with the rounded shape, so just gonna finish this one here and then select the background color and start like refining this with a more sharp lines. And one thing you can do is hold shift, not shift, start painting and then hold shift, and then you get this line, and that allows you to create these straight lines like so. So that makes more sense now. Let's do that again. So I want to create like a very thin spike here. Alright, that looks good. And let's do the same thing. Oops. I actually like this whole area being white, so I'm just going to refine this border here. Alright, so that looks good. I think that's looking a little bit better. Alright, so let's clear that mask, and now we have a look at everything. How's everything looking together? Maybe we can incorporate some of these white here on the ventilation system, but that's something that we can also do with the projection of the other decal images. Maybe something. Let's just refine this bit here in the front. So let's select that one. I'm gonna select the green color. I'm not entirely convinced about the green color though, but we'll just go with it and see how we go. Let's select the orange color and do the same thing here. And I'm not too worried about the inside because I'm gonna try to paint these areas with black anyway. And if you guys have any questions about what I'm doing, which is pretty basic at the moment, I'll just answer them in a second. I'll have a look at the chat in just a second. Oops. Alright, we have to fine tune this a little bit more. So I'm gonna go into solo mode and turn on polyframe, and I'm gonna go ahead and select this so I can just paint this more freely, and just refine this bit with white. Alright, and let's invert that, and let's hide this one as well, hide these areas, and I'm gonna use the black color just to paint this here. Alright, and we can also come back here and refine this area at the back. So that area, or this area, could be all green just to follow these lines. So I'm gonna select that one as well, that one, that one, that one. Hang on a second, I think I have too many polygroups here. Yeah, definitely too many. So I just need to paint this one really. That is the one that I need to paint with the green. Maybe this shouldn't be an orange either. So like you see, it's kind of like design it as I go, or designing these bits as I go. It's kind of fun as well, and a bit liberating. not trying to follow a concept too precisely right now. So let's select these ones as well. Just gonna hide them. Alright, and also the borders, which in this case I think is gonna be easy to just invert everything. Hang on a second. It's really hard for me to know what polygroups I have if I don't have them selected. So I'm just gonna turn on polyframe and start hiding everything that I don't need. Okay. These ones should actually be part of the selection. Alright, so all of these ones could be white, I think. We just do a quick polygrouping of auto group. Alright, so that makes a little bit more sense to me now. And I'm gonna hide everything but this part and make this white. So fill object. Alright, there we go. Makes more sense now. Let's have a look at everything together. And I think it's looking pretty good. Maybe we can do a bit of this design as well here in the spoiler. So I'm gonna select that and I'm gonna turn off subdivide or smooth subdivide, and I'm gonna subdivide this a couple times. A few more times actually. 1 million polygons should be plenty. Maybe one more. It's gonna be a lot of polygons right now for a low poly card, but one thing we can do is just generate a texture map later on, and then we can get rid of all the subdivision level. So let's go ahead and bring in the spotlight, and I think I'm gonna make this orange as well. Let's try to keep that angle on the spoiler as well. Make sure that symmetry is enabled. It is. Going to solo mode just in case. Oops. Before I do that, actually I need to separate this so that I don't mess around with the polypaint we did for the tubes. Alright, there we go. Bring spotlight and let's just paint that. Alright, and now we can just refine this polypaint a little bit with the right color. This one is not letting me paint here. I have to get a little bit closer. Alright, let's check the polygroups again. And I'm just gonna hide some of them. I'm gonna hide this one, this one, this one, this one, and the same thing on this side. Okay, and I'm gonna hide also the tubes or these holders on the spoiler. And maybe this part as well, because actually all I want is to fill this flat area with the original color, so that we can get rid of all this mess that we did here with the projection. So let's select the blue one, fill object, and now it looks way cleaner. Alright, now we have solo mode. I'm just gonna take a sip of water, check the chat and see what you guys want to know. Also, let's do a quick save. That's my new resolution. Every time that I look at the chat, I'm gonna do a quick save so that we don't lose progress. Is this a stylized Metro 6R4? If you're referring to a car, like I said, I have no idea about cars, but it sure is. I don't know. Last stream, someone suggested this was a Subaru Impreza, I think it is, the hatchback one. Could be. Like I said, I have no idea, but yeah, it could be. Joseph. Hello, I have a question. White color gives you material color, but how to actually paint white? This is actually white. It's I think I know what you mean. So selecting a white color will just paint white, but if you have a material selected, it is going to reveal that material, right? Is that what you, hopefully that's what you mean? If you want a pure white or shadeless, I mean, the color is white. It's just that you are seeing the color in combination with the material or matte cap. So you're going to be seeing a bit of shading. Like in this case, this polygon right here looks slightly lighter than this one right here, right? But it's a white color. If you want to see the contribution of just the what is called the albedo, in some cases, or just the color with no information in the material, you have to select a flat material. So you can go to the material palette and select this flat color. That will give you a good indication of what the color, the underlying color is. So this is all the color. It has no shading information, but as you can see, the white color is actually white. It's not material. So hopefully that's what you mean. If not, let me know. Hey Pablo, would you please render it in Keyshot? I think I would render it in Keyshot later on, not in this stream. This, like I said, this I mentioned this in the previous stream. These streams or these sessions are more focusing on ZBrush, and that's why it's called Make It Happen in ZBrush, and it's broadcast through the ZBrush Live channel. So we're gonna focus 100% on ZBrush in this channel, but I can do a rendering of Keyshot later on, and then just show the process in a different stage. How you make those light effects in Keyshot? Do you mean, Mr. Sanson? Joseph sent the link. I think the green color is soft. The blue color looks better. Interesting UI. Pablo, you stream rocks. Thank you, network. The network. Thank you very much. What's the software you're using to make the sketch lines on the screen? That is Epic Pen. This one here. It's a free software. You can pay for the pro version. It has like a bunch of extra stuff. So it's pretty cool. I really like it because it doesn't affect too much when I'm doing recordings or anything like that. So it's pretty. And it also has pressure with the tablet, so it's pretty cool. I think who said this, Mr. Sanson? Yeah, I think you're right. The green color is a little bit off, so let's go ahead and change it. You're totally right. I agree. So let's select that. Oops. Let's select the fender, and I'm gonna go into solo mode, turn on polyframe, and I think the best way to go about this would be to select just the areas that has the green color. Alright, I think this one would be fine. I mean, it's gonna be a little bit messy because we already alright, to fix this is not a big deal. Let's just start with that. Let's go ahead and hide so like the main parts of this fender bit, and I'm just gonna polygroup that so that it's easy to select. This bit as well. No, actually that bit is the inside, which we need it to be dark, so I'm gonna invert that, and I'm gonna assign a polygroup to this visible area. Alright, and now it's gonna be easy to just isolate it, but now that we have this isolated already, let's go ahead and mask out using the mask pen and just masking this area here, and that's the area that we want to keep as orange, and then we can just select white color and fill object, and that's it for the green. Green is off. Totally right. Get out of solo mode. Yeah, that green color was off. I don't know why I added it. I think the yellow is fine. It just adds a little different color just to go with the rim and the lights. But yep, thank you for that. I think that looks a little bit better. There's some bits with green still here, but that's an easy fix. we might have to regroup everything by normal. So let's go to poly groups and group by normal, so we can. Ooh, I forgot to do this in the lowest subdivision level, so it's gonna take a while, and hopefully it's not gonna crash. I should not done that. So this is a relatively simple process, the group by normals, but if you do it in the highest subdivision level at 3 million polygon, that is my bad. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat while we wait and see. Hopefully ZBrush is not going to crash, and if it does, we saved a quick save before we got rid of the green, so we're not too far behind. I'm just going to try to move a little bit faster because we have done this in an hour, and I want to show the show a little bit more of the creation of a little scene with some trees and stuff. Yes, the effects you made for the cover of this stream. In the yeah, that's a quick issue render. You just assigned a light a light to the lights themselves, and they would just emit light. All right. So this worked. I'm gonna do a quick save just in case. But now that we have these extra polygroups, oh, it's saving the undo history. Brilliant. I've been missing a couple of things here today. So like I said, we're gonna try to move a little bit faster. Now that we have these polygroups, I can just invert that selection, and I'm gonna use this to paint with a white color. Okay. Alright, I think we are good to go. Let's go ahead and add some of the images just to wrap this part up, and then we can do the scene, and I'll show you some other really cool techniques that we can use. So I'm going to select this one, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to subdivide this, turn this off, subdivide this a couple times, maybe up to 1 million is fine, hopefully. And let's bring in let's go ahead and put maybe the Z logo, the ZBrush Live logo. That's the one that we're gonna put in here. So it's a little car sponsored by ZBrush Live and ZBrush Guides. Alright, so now that we have that there, we can do a couple of things. I mean, once you use Spotlight, you're gonna project anything that is visible to the camera. So this logo is gonna be painted but inverted at the back, but we don't see it, so it's not a big deal. But if you wanted to avoid that, you can just mask the areas that you don't want to affect and then just project. So I don't have symmetry enabled, which is great, and that is what I want. So I'm gonna just paint this like so. We could do with a bit more resolution actually, because that one looks terrible. Let's just add one more. So lots of polygons right now. Let's reposition this logo. That looks a little bit better. I mean, it's not super well defined, but this is something that we can then export, like I said, a texture map, and then we can refine things in Photoshop. Probably out of the scope for this stream, but starting to look a little bit more interesting. Let's go ahead and place some images here as well. So I'm gonna isolate these ones on the other side as well. Mask everything, bring back everything. So now we can just paint only on these areas without affecting the rest. And I'm gonna bring in the light box, and I think we can place maybe the ZBrush Guides logo here. See how we go, as well as the number 19. So this one is going to be a tiny one. Alright. Again, with this one we might need as well some more polygons, but we already reached 4 million polygons, so it's fine. We could use this as a reference to fine-tune the texture once we exported it. So not too fussed about this. It's gonna look good from the distance anyway. Alright, I'm gonna do the same thing for maybe the number 19 here. Yeah, maybe that one looks good. I'm gonna reduce the size of my brush and let's go ahead and paint that. So I'm gonna try to move a little bit faster here, not get too hung up by well, that one cannot be read properly because we don't have enough resolution, so maybe that's not the best one for this part. Let's leave it there, or actually let's undo that. I said that I was gonna try to move a little bit faster, but sometimes you just need to go back and tweak things. I'm gonna just increase the size of this logo here and let's paint that. Alright, so now we have a few more. Let's go ahead and do the same thing here for the top. And for here, for this area, let's select that part of the car, get out of symmetry. Here we can use something maybe this logo. Increase my brush size. Alright, something like that. I think that looks okay. Maybe add a couple more things. You know what? Maybe the green color is not too bad actually for the number. See how we go. I'm gonna place it here and on the side. Let's try actually the white one that didn't work on the other side, and I'm gonna try to place this one here. We definitely need more resolution to be able to place this number. So I'm gonna go for the green one. That is gonna be probably easier to just place. Okay, so that looks alright. Let's go ahead and place some more logos here. ZBrush Live. And I'm going to try to do this really quickly because again, I already kind of like explained what I did there. And maybe here in the fender bit we can add a logo as well. I mean, most of the things we have are white, so let's just try to place a tiny one in here. Alright, so something like that. And like I said, I know this looks crappy in terms of the resolution, but I don't want to go too high, and I'm just gonna use this as a reference and then create a proper texture map. So I think that's fine. Maybe in the spoiler we should actually paint something in here. That's gonna be a big sponsor. Let's go for ZBrush guys. Yeah. Alright. Oops, have symmetry on. Alright, so that's looking a little bit more interesting. I feel like here in the front we could just add a couple more stuff. So I'm gonna select that, isolate this bit, mask it, invert the mask, and let's go ahead and place some lines in here. So it could be the same yellow one that we use on the other side, something like that. Right, and with symmetry enabled, you can go ahead and paint this. Cool. I think that's looking pretty good. I mean, we're going a little bit over the top. There's one thing that I forgot, which is this duct area, this air duct. When I select that, and let me just go into solo mode. I have to select the right part, right. Alright, so now with this one selected, I think we have polygroups. Yep, so I'm going to select that one, and I'm going to select that one, inverted, and I'm going to use black color to mask that area. Again, now it now makes more sense to have this as a dark color. And I think we are ready to go. I think I want to make the antenna a little bit darker, so I'm going to fill it with a black color. Maybe a sponsor here at the back would be good as well. And I think, yeah, let's go ahead and place another sponsor here. Solo. I mean, I don't have many sponsors, but I don't want to use, I mean, I use most of these logos already. So let's go ahead and just place the 19 here. Hopefully we have enough resolution in this area. Let's get out of symmetry. Nah, it's not going to be enough. You know what? Let's just place a big 19 there. Doesn't matter if you cannot read it properly. It's going to be a reference, like I said. Going to solo mode, and I'm going to paint that like so. Alright, and maybe let's say that there is like an aerial shot, and we need to make sure that we know what car, which number car we're using, or we're seeing in the broadcast. So I'm gonna place the number 19 green again here. Oops, a bit more center. Alright, I'm gonna paint this one, and I think we are ready to go. Cool, so I'm gonna do a quick save. We have the rally card basically done. We can add a couple more lines, something to go with the design, like another couple very small green lines here, but I'll leave this one for later when I refine the texture later on. I want to be able to finish today. We have about an hour left, and I want to show you the cool techniques actually, because this is pretty standard and kind of like boring to watch. I'm going to turn off undo history so that it doesn't take as long for saving. Alright, let me just check the chat. Is it possible to achieve that result in ZBrush? Are you still talking about the lights? If you are, you will have to fake them, but no, you cannot, because ZBrush doesn't have these photorealistic rendering capabilities like KeyShot, so it's gonna be pretty hard to emulate that. Actually, the ZBrush on the hood is flipped. Is it? The ZBrush on the hood is flipped. Is it? I cannot see it. ZBrush live, ZBrush guys. Not sure which one we are referring to. I personally don't like the UI. I got used to the custom floating menus. Michael Pablo has great YouTube tutorials to create custom UI. Yep, check that out. I just, to be honest, I'm in a Cintiq in a 24-inch monitor, and I think this is a pretty comfortable space, especially when you're moving your arm all around. So I have all these set up in my UI, but I do have the floating menus as well. So I use these ones quite a bit. That's my custom UI. This is just for different processes that I use. So I have all my series meshing and kind of like my low poly modeling around here, and to refine, I have document settings and stuff at the top. My brushes and materials and colors on this side. So I know how things are placed, but for the common things that I use most of the time, I have this as well, this custom pop-up menu and I have that map to the Cintiq. But this is the reason why I have it the way that I have it. It is the UI is different in my Mobile Studio Pro because, well, it's different. It's more constrained the space. But another reason I have this one like that and don't have anything on the left hand side is because I don't want to cover anything because I'm right-handed. So if I go over this side, I will cover what I'm doing. So everything is either at the top, bottom, or on the right hand side. That's the rationale behind the UI that I'm using. Alright, so with that out of the way, I think one thing we can do really quickly is select the subtool list and go all low, and obviously we won't be able to see any of this, but I'm going to really quickly select the parts that have Polypaint, right? And I'm going to do a quick UV map so that I can project this into a texture really quickly, and we can get rid of those subdivision levels because we don't really need them. So let's go into solo mode. Let's go to the C plugin, UV master. I'm going to leave symmetry and polygroups. There's a bunch of polygroups. I'm not too fussed about how this looks. So unwrap that. Then we can go to the highest subdivision level. So, and we can go to the texture palette and click create from Polypaint. Alright, so now we have a texture created. It's not the greatest UVs or anything, but again, for this it doesn't really matter. Now we have now we have a texture. We can go ahead and go back to the lowest subdivision level, and we can delete higher, and now we're back to 354 polygons, but we have the texture. Cool. So I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna repeat the process in case you missed that one. Select the subtool that I need, and I'm going to go to the highest subdivision level, and I'm gonna go ahead and create a texture from Polypaint. So, oh, sorry, before I do that, sorry, let's go back to the lowest subdivision, create UVs, because otherwise you cannot create a texture. Now, highest subdivision level, create texture from Polypaint, go back to the lowest, delete higher, so now we're back to 262, but we have the texture. Let's do the same thing for the other parts that have Polypaint, like this hood in here. UV, unwrap, let's go to the highest subdivision level, create texture from Polypaint, go back to the lowest subdivision level, delete higher, and I think we're done. Those are all of them. There's one more, I think, because 4 million polygons, that doesn't sound right. So let me just go through all the subtools really quickly. You can here we go, the fender bit. So let's do the same thing. Plugin, unwrap, then we can go to the highest subdivision level, go to the texture palette, create texture from Polypaint, and now we can go back to the lowest subdivision level, delete higher, and now we have 10,000 points. That sounds about right for this model. Yeah, cool. So that is the approach. If you want to spend the time to create a properly UV texture map, you totally can, and then do the same process, but then export the UVs or the texture, and then fine tune that in Photoshop, bring it back in, and then you will have obviously more resolution because now you're not constrained to the points that you're using in the actual mesh. You're just using a texture map. So that's something that to keep in mind, and that's why I'm not too fussed about this. We can just tweak that later on. Alright, so let's go ahead and do a quick save. Shouldn't take that long now that we don't have undo. And let's just start creating some quick assets to generate a scene for this car, to place that car in a scene. So we can do that in a separate tool just to make it easier. I'm going to select a cone 3D, select a different color and a different material. Alright, and I'm going to scroll down to the bottom. You'll see that this is a primitive, that's why I don't have some of these tools here at the bottom. And also we have the ability to go to the initialize palette, and we can tweak this a little bit. So I'm going to turn on polyframe. I don't need that many polygons, so I'm going to reduce this to 3, the V divide or the vertical divide, and the horizontal divide I think we can get away with 8 sides. Yeah, I think that's fine. Alright, let's go ahead and turn this into a Polymesh 3D. And now we're gonna bring in the C modeler again, and this is gonna be, or this cone is gonna be the base, or yeah, the base form to create a series of pine trees, or create a pine tree first and then duplicate that. So to do that, I want to create something that has, I mean, this already for a very low poly scene and the style that I'm going for, this might work already as a cone that is just a tree, but I want to do a little bit more interesting. So what I think I'm going to do is select, using the Alt key, I'm going to tag these polygons, and maybe what I'll do, no, you know what, let me undo that. I'm just thinking here what would be the best way to sort of extrude these edges by themselves so that they're not connected, so we can create kind of like a, let me just show you, like a flick of this. So I want to take this edge and extrude it kind of like that, similar with this one. So it's gonna look more interesting. So basically there's a gap in between, so if we extrude everything, ZBrush is gonna keep these points together. So that's what I'm sort of thinking what would be the best approach in this case. And I think the easiest one really will be to select the edge, hover over the edge, press the spacebar, and I'm gonna click insert. I'm just gonna drag one, whoops. Actually, we'll have to tag these polygons, there's no way around it. Alright, now we can go insert, select insert region, so it's gonna create an insert just in that tagged region like so. Alright, so that works. Now let's go ahead and tag this polygon, sort of like skipping one, and we can just hover over the face, make sure Q mesh is enabled, or that is the action. I'm gonna extrude that, maybe like that. Alright, and I'm gonna do the same thing here, but this time I'm just gonna extrude it, because if I use Q mesh, ZBrush is gonna merge these two when this polygon hits this area, it's gonna merge them together. So I'm gonna tag these ones, and I'm gonna extrude this not all the way. I'm gonna variate it a little bit like that. And now if I just do a quick divide to check, you'll see those lines are not connected, right? So I'm gonna undo that. And obviously, because this is a low poly mesh, or the idea is to keep everything pretty low poly, what I need to do is get rid of some of these polygons. So because we have polygroups, we can get rid of this one really quickly. Just delete polygroup all, and that will delete that one. We can do the same thing for this one, but these ones we cannot, because they're sharing the same polygroup. So we will have to hover over this one, change polygroup all to single poly, and then we can just delete them manually. I mean, this is a pretty simple geometry anyway, so it's gonna be really fast to do it. Just deleting the faces. Alright, so I think that is it. Cool. So now what I want to do is kind of like expand this, or make them, move them around. So for that, I can do a couple of things. We can use a deformer, but we probably need more resolution. So let me just hover over the edge and click insert. We might actually need a couple, so I'm going to select multi edge loops and select maybe 2. And now we can click and drag and just click everywhere, not everywhere, but on all of these. Let's just call it flicks. I don't know how else to call them. And now we have more resolution. Alright, and now we can go ahead and maybe select everything, or mask everything, invert that, select the Gizmo 3D, center that pivot, and I'm gonna start scaling these things out manually. Now we can mask out this other row like that, and maybe the last bit as well. Alright, so not too bad. What I'm going to do is now assign a polygroup, and now what we can do is tweak these individually. If you're not happy with how this shape looks, you can just obviously go ahead and keep tweaking it so that it looks more in line to what you have in mind. The thing for me is that I don't have anything in mind right now, So I'm just trying to design it as I go. Alright, that feels a little bit better. Now we can use the move brush to start moving things around. I have a pretty low, well, the brush size is pretty small, but if I do this, you'll see it grabs both points. So an easy fix for that, or a workaround, is to use the move topological brush that respect the continuity of the polygon. So I just want to make these ones slightly more pointy. And that's going to create a really cool effect for this pine tree. And again, I'm just creating the assets to build a quick scene around the rally, so that that the car is, I don't know, how do you call that, drifting along the curve, but we need some scenery. And this is going to be really quickly, a really quick and dirty fix for that. Alright. Again, guys, if you have any questions about this process, I know it's pretty simple so far, like there's nothing too crazy, but if I click somewhere that you didn't know what I did, just put in the comments. I'm happy to go back and show you. We're not in a rush here. We kind of are, because I want to finish it, but you know, if you guys have questions, that's more of a priority than just finishing it. The whole point of this is just to show some stuff that you might find useful, rather than just actually finish work, because this is not going to be a portfolio piece or anything, or it might be, you know, we don't know at this point. Alright, so that's looking a little bit better. I want to randomize the placement a little bit more and the shapes. Cool, so I think we can just scale this down a bit, and we are ready to go. So I'm going to do another quick save. Mr. Masson saying, it should be flipped. Yeah, you're totally right. Yeah, so that the person behind you can read it. So that's one thing. But I think the sponsoring or the logos in the cars are meant for the viewers, not for the other cars. But maybe the number, I don't know. I'm gonna leave it like that, and that's something that we can tweak later on in the texturing part. Where to download your UI? I haven't put it online. I can put it in the. If you go to the ZBrush guides, there is a section for just UIs. You can download a bunch of UIs that I have set up for specific purposes, like low poly modeling, or just sculpting, or just painting. You can download those. I haven't put this one in here because it's very, like, UI is very personal, I think. So I can just give it this or put this online, but it's not gonna do anything for you. I don't think it's gonna be as useful for you, because I have a bunch of macros here. Like, for example, just to give you an example, I have this clean mask edge split. So that's a macro that I created to do a specific part. So if you have this custom UI and you click this one, you might not know what it's doing, because it's a series of steps that I take to produce that. Similar to, I have a few more here. Let me just try to find them now. This Dyna to Subdivide, that is going to take a Dynamesh. It's a simple macro that is going to take a Dynamesh blob with horrible topology. It's going to clean that up, remesh it, project all the details, and give you a cleaner piece all in one go. So not only you have to install the UI, but also install the macros and know what the macros do. That's why I also create a post in the ZBrush guides to show how to customize your UI and how to do it with a purpose, and how I approach this process of generating a custom UI. So if you go to the ZBrush guides again, just type UI or search the I think it's one of the references in the filters. You just type filtering or filter by reference, and then you'll be able to find it there. I'm just gonna show you what I mean, so that you don't think that I'm just saying this for the sake of it. I do think it's very important that you customize your UI. It's like one of the most important things to optimize your workflow, but it has to be for your workflow. It's really hard to just what am I doing? I'll go to geometry. I'm gonna Dynamesh this. This is a little bit too big for this demonstration, so I'm gonna Dynamesh this, and I'm gonna start pulling things like that, and maybe just do a couple of sculpting, lines, Dynamesh. Okay, so this is just nothing, right? But it's a blob of Dynamesh. So one of the tools that I was mentioning in my UI is this Dyna to Subdiv. So I can just click Dyna to Subdiv, wait until ZBrush does this, and like I said, this is a macro that does a few processes at once. So right now it is doing it, hopefully. And you'll see that now, if from a Dynamesh blob it created this, more remeshed mesh like this, right? So now it has a cleaner topology than the Dynamesh, and it projected all the details and all that. So that's a series of steps that I do in one single click, just to project the details and all that. So if I go back, you'll see this is all that it's doing. Well, not that. Here. So it's taking that, subdividing it, then subdividing one more, applying whatever subdivision level you had, then running the series mesher, then subdividing series mesher, then project the details and subdivide that one more time. I mean, a series of steps, but they're part of one single macro. So that's the reason why I don't share this one. I can share it, totally can. I'm not saying that I don't want to or anything. I just don't think it's gonna be useful. I will have to do an entire tutorial about how my UI works for me and see if that works for you as well. So let's go back to this one really quickly. I'm gonna finish with the props. So creating this tree is gonna be really simple. I'm gonna hold Control, click and drag to create another one, just to scale it a little bit, and also maybe rotate it like so, maybe a little bit as well on a random axis or based on the camera. Let's do the same thing. Hold Control, click and drag, scale it, reset the rotation, scale it a little bit more, a little bit higher. Alright, and let's rotate this a bit as well, and as well something so that it doesn't look perfectly aligned. Alright, let's do the same thing again. Control, click and drag, reset rotation, scale it up and proportionally, and we can rotate things one more time, and something like that should be fine. Just checking that there's no intersecting geometry. There's a little bit in here, but not a big deal. Alright, so now we can clear the mask, and we have this very simple tree, very simple pine tree that we can go ahead and paint with a color. So let's just select, turn off polyframe. I'm going to select a bright green. This is like a cartoonish stylizing anyway, so we can go for bright colors to make it more interesting. And let's go ahead and fill object, and we can bring in maybe the standard brush, and I'm going to clone that, and let's turn off CAD and turn on RGB, reduce the intensity a little bit, and we have not a lot of polygon right now, so it's going to be a nice gradient if we select like a yellowish color just to paint this top bit. It's almost hard to see, but it is happening. Maybe slightly darker green here for the bottom. So that's just a way to create a bit of variety in the hues, so it's not completely, completely green, the same color. Alright, so that's looking good. Let's go ahead and create a trunk for the tree, and that is pretty simple. We can do a couple of things. We can duplicate this, right? And it's just another subtool that we can bring in the gizmo, and we can select one of these primitives, like this cylinder 3D. I want to select polycylinder, and the difference between these two is that the polycylinder doesn't have a single vertex where everything is sort of colliding at the both ends. So if I select that and turn polyframe on and solo, you'll see the way that this geometry is arranged is a little bit different. So let's go ahead and arrange this so that it resembles more like a tree trunk or something like that. Alright, and we can also bring in the taper deformer, and we can just do something like that. This is too thick, but we can also tweak this the curvature with this deformer. So the yellow cones are the controls, and this white one allows you to tweak the influence of these controls. So that looks good. Let's go ahead and, I think too thick, maybe just to scale it down a bit and scale it up. And we can use the move brush really quickly. Turn off polyframe and just randomize the shape a little bit, so it's not a perfect cylinder. One thing I would like to do though is, I think there are too many lines here, so it's just breaking that idea of being a very low poly mesh. So let's go ahead and do a zero remesher, see what that gives us, and we can click half and keep remeshing until we have a very low, cleaner topology here. It gets to a point that it's going to be hard to go lower than this, but I think that one is fine. Yeah, that's fine. Let's go ahead and fill it with a dark brown color, and we can just paint, bring in the custom, undo that, let's do it again. Fill it with the dark color, and then use a lighter one in solo mode, maybe to lighten up some parts of this. Cool. Alright, so we have that ready. What I'm gonna do now is merge these two together. So go to the merge palette, merge that down. Okay, so now we have the tree. That's good. Let's do a quick save, check the chat. We're gonna do a couple of rocks and something else for like a smoke, or not a smoke, yeah, maybe like a smoke, or the dirt that is being dragged. What is he? Hey, Kim Jong-un. Kim, I don't know how to pronounce it. Kim Jong-un. What are we making? We're making a rally car scene. So we have the rally car here, and now we're creating some assets for that scene. But it's gonna be pretty simple. It's a low poly scene. All right. So let's go ahead and append a sphere. Select that sphere here. Go into solo mode, and this is gonna be the rock. So it's gonna be super simple. So what we can do is hold the shift brush and enable Sculptris Pro. I can turn on polyframe so you can see what is happening. So it's kind of like decimating it manually. We can increase the decimation size a little bit. Alright, I think that's better for this scene. We can just increase it like so, and we can do a couple of things. We can bring in the H polish. Let's just select the H polish, and I'm gonna try to flatten some of these areas, of these polygons, just to change this blobby shape into a more like a rock, like a low poly rock. And something here at the bottom. We can also use the move brush to, change the shape a little bit, exaggerate it. We're gonna keep it low poly again, so it doesn't really matter too much. Alright, I think that's good for a rock. What we can do is later on rotate it in different shapes, and that way we can variate this rock. So let's go ahead and paint it with a light gray color, maybe a bit more, and then we can use a lighter color here, maybe around the blue hues. And with the brush that we created for Polypaint that doesn't have any CR, I'm just gonna add some color variation around there, maybe something darker here at the bottom as well. And that is it. So we have a rock, we have the tree. Now let's go ahead and actually let me just unify that, select the tree as well, and unify that as well. So we have these kind of like sitting in the same space. let's do another one for the smoke or the dirt. That's gonna be another very simple sphere. So append sphere, select that, go into solo mode, and I'm gonna do the same technique that I used just before, holding shift, enabling Sculptris Pro, and I'm gonna reduce this to, whoops, that's too much. Alright, and this one could be just a simple sphere. We can leave it as it is, and we can maybe just leave it without polypaint. I'm gonna leave it without polypaint, and we polypaint it later on. So turn off that, and we are ready to create this kind of like in a insert brush and populate the scene. So let's do that. Let's go into solo mode. Let's go ahead and select the, actually I'm going to create two brushes, one for the tree and another one, or three brushes really, because the smoke is going to be Nanomesh. So let's create the brush for the tree first. Quick save. So let's go ahead and go to the brush palette, create insert mesh, new, and now we have that little tree with polypaint and everything, and we can just do that. We might lose the polypaint, but it doesn't matter. We'll just paint them later on, and that way we create more variation. Alright, so now that we have that tree, maybe we can just push it down a bit so that it embeds into the mesh. So that's one of the brushes. Now the second one will be a multi-insert brush for this rock, and I want to variate the way that is dragged into the mesh. So we can just go ahead and create a new insert mesh, create new, and then bring in the Gizmo 3D and start center that pivot, start rotating that, and let's go ahead and click create insert mesh, and instead of a new one I'm just gonna do append. So now we have let's just keep that until the next. We have two different rocks. Really, it's the same rock, but the angle is different, so when you drag it, it's gonna be a different rock ultimately. So I'm gonna do the same thing here. Maybe the size of the rock doesn't really matter because you can determine the size by just dragging. So just gonna leave it like that. Insert, append, and a couple more just to add variation. Insert, append. How are we with time? 35 minutes. Alright, we have about 30 minutes to set up the scene. I reckon it's enough time. Just gonna move a little bit faster, and let's just go ahead and do a couple more. And again, this is just the same object, just rotating it around, and append. So we have now essentially 5 different rocks, and we can start selecting one and dragging it and so on. But what I'll do is just reduce this for all of them, or this depth, and that way they're all kind of like embedded into the mesh a little bit more. Like you can see here, it's kind of like embedding. Now the other thing we can do to set up this brush and finalize this brush is to randomize how these things are placed. So I'm just gonna select the brush palette and go to the modifiers, and here we have these where is it? This multi-mesh selector, and it should have these 3 numbers, right? So 0 means that you select whatever you want from here and then drag it. 1, I think it's moving progressively forward. 2 is moving from right to left, I think, and the third one is just random. So when I click and drag, it's gonna select one, then the next one. So you'll see every time that I drag, it's just randomly selecting a different rock. So that's why it's really easy to do that. So I'm gonna undo that and leave that brush as it is. Alright, that's all we needed to do. And for the smoke, let's go ahead and create a new insert mesh, but this one we actually need to create a nanomesh. So after it is an insert mesh, let's create a nanomesh. Cool, so we are ready to go in terms of the brushes that we created. We can go ahead and create the scene, or the kind of like the ground. So that can be done in a separate tool. Let's select a plane. Where am I? plane 3D. There you go. Almost couldn't find that. And I'm gonna turn that into Polymesh 3D, and I'm gonna use the Gizmo 3D to rotate it. So all of these that I'm doing is just setting up the scene. But once you have all these parts ready, all the assets, it's really easy and really fun to create that little composition. Alright, I think that one looks fine there in terms of the size. I'm gonna switch to a madcap gray, turn on polyframe, and we can start like, you know, pushing things around. I think I'm gonna create kind of like the curvature here, and the car is gonna be, let me just draw it so you can see what I mean. So I'm gonna create like a high ground here. Hopefully this makes sense. I'm gonna place the trees like that, and then the car is gonna be moving this way. So here's gonna be the car drifting, and yeah, so all the dirt and everything is gonna be splattered around this area, and he's kind of like in a curve. So it's gonna be pretty simple, like I said. So let's go ahead and do that with this first. So I'm gonna select the mask lasso, and I'm gonna mask out this area, and I'm just gonna push this up like that. And I'm almost feeling that maybe I shouldn't use, nah, I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna keep it simple and just use the plane, because then you'll have to fill this with other stuff. You know what, let me just undo that, and I'm gonna actually mask out that area. Alright, so now we can kind of like protect, oops, that area a little bit. Let's see if, alright, that looks a little bit better. It's too high, something like that. And let's go ahead and use the move brush, clear the mask, and I'm gonna start tweaking this shape a little bit. I can also turn on the AccuCurve for the move brush, and that allows us to move more pointy bits, which is ideal for this type of low poly scene. And we could have more polygons around here, but again, we're going to try to keep it very low poly. So I actually don't mind this. Alright, so now that that's done, kind of, let's get out of, so that looks alright. Let's go ahead and do something for the tracks, or for the path of this car. So we can do something with the clay builder brush. I'm just gonna push this in a little bit. It's kind of hard to tell right now, but I'm just pushing this area a little bit, and that is just to add a bit of variation to the terrain, if you will. And we have about 20 minutes. I reckon we'll finish it, unless maybe we'll see if the Pixology guys, what do they say, but maybe I can just stick for a little bit, stick here for a little while after, just to finish it, maybe 20 minutes more. Not sure who's next. Can you guys check the schedule and see if I'm eating up time from someone else? If not, I can just stay like 20 minutes more to make sure that I finish that scene, this scene. Again, this is just move brush, nothing too complicated. And I think I like this sort of blockiness of this. One thing we could do to make it more interesting is to decimate this entire mesh. So we can go to the Decimation Master plugin, so that we have more triangles and we have more interesting shapes. We can pre-process current, and now let's go ahead and try to decimate it to 20%, see what that gives us. Maybe that's way too much, but I actually don't mind it. Let's see. I think that actually it's pretty cool. It goes with what we're trying to do, like a very simple low poly scene. So I like that. Alright, so now that we have the terrain, let's go ahead and quickly add a bit of color. Just gonna refine the shape actually first. We don't have too much polygons, or none at all really, but we'll give it a go, see what we can do with this. I'm gonna bring in maybe the best one for this will be the clay brush that we created for coloring it, and I'm gonna select like a lighter dirt color, fill object, and then use some other colors a little bit darker and desaturated to add variation to this. And let's go ahead and also do the same thing for this area. Just gonna paint it a little bit gray first, like so, and then I'm gonna use a green color for the grass area around here. I'm gonna reduce the brush, and I'm gonna try to target only these areas a little bit, not close to the edge. I don't want the green to sort of bleed into the other part. Alright, and maybe just a darker green here at the back, just to add variation on color. So that's looking alright. We can also maybe just make this a little bit more muddy, make it a bit darker here. Alright, so we have the base for our scene ready. Let's go ahead and do a quick save, and we can start bringing in the brushes that we created to complete this scene. So I'm going to start with the, you know what, actually we should start with the car, right? Placing the car. So let's select the car, and I'm going to go ahead and click on merge visible. Oh, before I do that, actually I need to change just one thing. Select the wheels, that one here, and I'm going to duplicate that so that we have a copy of that in case we messed up. And let's go to array mesh. I'm going to click make mesh to create the first duplicate, and make mesh to create the 4 wheels now. So now we have this as a single mesh, all looking good. Now let's go ahead and click merge visible. So now we should have a little car here. Oops, didn't think of that, because we have 3 different meshes with textures. When we merge everything down, we lose that ability of having those textures. So what I'm going to do is select the ones that have the texture, and I'm going to keep them as they are. And one thing we can do is actually rotate and do all the changes in this scene and just bring the other one. So that's going to be actually easier. Let's go ahead and copy this base mesh and go to the car and paste it in here. And we can just move this down a bit like that. Maybe scale it down a little bit more. Just want to make this very small and contained little scene. Actually, let's move that forward, scale it down a bit, and now we can take everything except this mesh. So if I select the gizmo and I click on this, like Joseph Dross calls it, the pizza menu, we can turn that on and we can move everything at once. But I don't want to move the base. So once this is selected, you can hold Control and Shift to bring in the selection tools, and then hold the Alt key, and that way, whoops, let's do inverted again. So again, Control and Shift. Why is it not working? Ah, there you go. So I was pressing the wrong one. So again, with Control and Shift, you can just do this type of thing, like select what you want to keep. Right now, it's going to move only the base mesh, but if I hold Control and click and Control Shift and click outside, it's going to invert that selection. So although we have this tool that allows you to move everything at once, it's only going to move the car. So I'm going to try to center that pivot to the car, and I'm going to start rotating it. You know what? Actually, I'm going to save this first as a separate image, or a separate scene, so we can go back to this if we need to. Alright, so now let's go ahead and start placing this car into the scene. So I'm gonna do like a very obvious drift. it more obvious that it's drifting around the curve. Alright, so I think that's looking good. Let's have a look. Alright, so that's good, but just to complete the effect, let's go ahead and select the wheels. I'm gonna do this individually. So select the wheels, go into solo mode, and I'm gonna mask only maybe this one first. Invert the mask. Now bring in the gizmo. Let's get out of solo mode. Bring in the gizmo 3D, and I'm gonna turn off this pizza menu. Center that pivot, and I can just rotate this to really exaggerate that effect of the drifting of the car. Alright, now let's do the same thing for the other one. Invert selection, center that pivot, and bring back everything. So that one needs to be kind of like, I don't know if these cars have like some sort of like independent, you know, turning of the wheels, but I'm gonna make it so that it looks like that. Alright, let's go ahead and clear that mask, and we're pretty close to finish this initial setup, and we start adding all the assets. So that's kind of what I wanted. We can select the base, the quick save, and we can start refining some bits that maybe just to avoid the intersecting geometry, like here. So we can do it from the bottom. Actually, it's going to be easier to just push the polygons where this is intersecting, and that looks really good to me. We can move forward. Let's go ahead and I think that looks alright. Let's go ahead and actually we can, I think this base is making too much contrast because of the definition of the polypaint. So let's go ahead and do this really quickly. We have 10 minutes. Let me just check if we can stay for a little bit longer. So I think it should be fine, but I just want to confirm. Like I said, this is having too much of a contrast. So one thing we could do is subdivide this. So let's go ahead and try that. I'm going to keep this subdivision or the smooth subdivision off. And I'm going to subdivide this mesh a few times so we have definitely more resolution. Now we can turn off polyframe and we can start painting again with a bit more resolution. Let's do that. So I'm good to go. Great. Alright, so we can stay there stay here just to complete this. I reckon it's gonna be only 20 more minutes or less, 15 minutes. So let's go ahead and just do this painting of this grass. I think that's gonna look a little bit better. And I'm using the custom clay builder brush that we created, so that's why we're getting this kind of like nice squarish pattern. Let's go ahead and select another color, just lighter gray. That's too much. This is going to be covered anyway. We're going to try to do some quick fiber mesh low poly grass as well, but just to have an indication. And obviously these bits we can maybe with the other brush, the smooth brush, sorry, the standard brush, we can just have a little bit more of a more definition here. So I'm going to select these colors in here, and I guess this color suggests that this area is like the dirty one, or the one that the cars go through. So I'm just going to try to make it a little bit more evident. And also just select this one. I mean, it's not too obvious, but I think adding these extra bits of color is way more is way better. Now this is I just thought about something that actually we can use, and it's gonna be pretty cool. It's a cool trick. So let me just show you that. That's actually exciting. Let's go ahead and reduce back to the lowest subdivision level, and let's do a quick UV map. UV master. Yeah. Let's do. We don't need symmetry. We don't have polygroups, so we can just unwrap this. All right. So now we have a UV map, and we can go back to the highest subdivision level and create a map, texture map based on the Polypaint, which is what we did for the parts of the car that has like that have the decal and stuff. But another thing we can do that is pretty cool is, let's go ahead and select the clay builder brush, select a black color, and I'm just gonna paint some areas here like this, and this is gonna work kind of like a transparency. So we'll be able to, we won't have that very super well defined edge here. We're just gonna have something that works a little bit like more like a presentation diorama. So similar to, it's like a self-contained scene, but it's gonna be nicer to present. We don't have those hard edges, and that is a very simple thing to do. So essentially anything that is black is gonna be removed. So we can do something here as well. Alright, we can even go with a smaller brush size. Again, this is all going to be part of the texture. So it should look pretty cool once we add the transparency. We'll see how we go. Alright, so now that we have that, so we painted on the text on the Polypaint this black color, and now we can turn this into a texture and play with the transparency. So let's go down here to the bottom, create a new texture map from Polypaint. Alright, so now we have the texture. Now let's go ahead and go to the lowest subdivision level. We can delete higher now. We don't care about the subdivisions anymore. So we're back to 217 points. And with this texture, if I turn it on and off, you'll see this is the result. What we can do is, let's turn Polypaint off just in case. It's not going to make any difference because we have the texture, and the texture maps should override stuff. But now that we have this like that, let's go ahead and click on transparent and bring this all the way to, not all the way, maybe something like that. And let's go ahead and click anti-alias. So there you go. That's a quick way to create this transparency. You can go ahead and tweak things a little bit more, but I think for the most part this looks alright. You know what, no, I don't like that. So I'm gonna undo a couple things until I go back to my highest subdivision level. Hopefully I don't, there you go, go to the highest subdivision level, and I'm gonna make sure I tweak this, so otherwise it looks crappy. Alright, and I'm gonna try to define the edges of this a bit more, so that there is no a gradient from black to the color, and that is gonna help us with the anti-alias and making sure that it's a sharp alpha. Just gonna refine this bit a bit more. I think this area was fine. Just gonna delete that one, remove this bit. Alright, so let's do this again. Texture from Polypaint, so that's a new texture. Let's go back to the lowest subdivision level, delete that, and we can just play with transparency. Alright, so that looks a little bit better. It's more well defined, and we can go back out of solo mode, and now we have the little car ready to go. Let's go ahead and put in the other brushes, or the trees. And to do that, I like to create a dummy geometry that we're gonna use to drag stuff from it, because if I drag it from here, from this base, it's gonna, whenever I drag from here, it's gonna have that texture map that we created for the base. So let's go ahead and append whatever, it doesn't matter what it is. Go to the bottom, and I'm gonna click on Q cube or Q sphere, doesn't matter, and it's gonna push this one here at the bottom. So this is just a dummy geometry that I'm going to use to drag in the rest of them, and then I can just delete that. That's just a dummy geometry. Let's go ahead now and select, let's start with the trees. So I'm going to select the tree brush we created, and I'm going to start adding these like so. Again, like I said, we're going to lose that polypaint, but it's alright. Better to do it, whoops, better to do it in these once they are set up. Alright, so we can just go ahead and keep dragging trees like that. There's going to be some intersection of the geometry, but again, that's all part of this look that I'm going for. Alright, so I'm going to rotate it, maybe scale it in the Z axis as well, just to add variation. Maybe these ones could be a little bit taller. Rotate it as well. Another thing you can do is every time that you drag and create and insert one of these trees, for example, you have everything masked, so you can select the gizmo and go to the bend arc and then just give it a little bit of rotation just to make it more interesting, maybe like this, except very tiny bit of rotation there. Let's go ahead and do the same thing here. I'm going to scale this like so, and I think we are getting there. I don't want to overcrowd this with trees. I think that's a good one. Maybe let's just add one more here. And this could be a tiny stumpy one. Or maybe a long, tall one, I don't know. Alright, I think that's looking alright. Let's go ahead, and this should keep the polygroups as well, so we can paint these really quickly. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and select a similar color, like a green color here, and let's fill that object. And I'm going to select the brush, the standard brush that has no information in depth. I'm going to select a lighter color, and I'm just going to paint this very quickly. And again, just trying to create some variation so that it's not exactly the same color. We can also change the stroke type to color spray, and that way we get even more variation when we draw the colors. Alright, and let's go ahead and hold Control and Shift to select just the bottom parts of the trees, like so. Invert that selection, and we can use something closer to this, but obviously darker, just to paint this like so. And maybe a little bit, I'm gonna get rid of this, change the stroke to the normal dots, and I'm gonna go for a darker version of this brown just for the bottom. Alright, bring back everything. So I think that's looking good. Let's go ahead and do the same thing for the, what's the other asset that we have, the stones or the rocks. So these ones I'm gonna add a few more here, and I think this one is not as embedded as I wanted to. No, it's fine. So remember that we have that randomize modifier in the brush, so we can just click and drag to change the, it will automatically change. Alright, I don't want to make too many of these either, because obviously we want to keep this track nice and clean. Just gonna add a few more here at the back, just changing the size a bit. And these are just to help with the composition and just to block some of these parts here at the back. Alright, I think that's looking alright. I'm gonna clear that mask, do a quick save, and these ones were kind of like gray, so again I'm gonna hold Control and Shift to isolate this one. Let's go ahead and Control Shift and click all these elements that are not part of this one, and now we can create a polygroup for this, so that if we have to select it again, it's just easier. And let's go back to the clay buildup or the standard one, doesn't matter, and let's select one of these hues, but we're gonna make it a bit more desaturated towards the gray area, and I'm just gonna start painting. Actually, let's just fill that object. It's just faster, and then use a lighter color to just add a variation here on the top, maybe closer to the white colors. Alright, so that's looking good. We can also select a darker color as well and just try to go into solo mode and target this bottom part of all these rocks. Again, very quickly. This is not, I'm not spending too much on this. Alright, now we can go back from solo, bring back everything else, and we are almost ready. I just want to create something that it looks like like all the dirt and everything, and that's another pretty cool technique that I can show you. So one thing I want to do, let's just go ahead and save. I'm going to show you how to create a custom brush that is going to place the Nanomesh brush or the dirt or the smoke. So that's a pretty cool trick that I think you guys are going to like. So I'm going to select a plain 3D, not a plain 3D, actually a plain 3D. I'm going to check the subdivision level, and I'm going to go down to the initialize tab, and here we can just reduce this to 2 and 2. I don't know what happened there. Oh, so this is, sorry, the V radius is 100, then H divide and V divide at 2, so that is a single polygon, very simple. Let's go ahead and click Polymesh 3D, and now we have this mesh. Then the next thing I want to do is create an insert brush. So click on brush, create insert mesh, create new. So now we have this plane that we can just drag in. The next thing is turn this into a curve brush. So I'm going to select the stroke, put it to the right, and I'm just going to need to click on this curve mode, and that will enable us to do this type of thing with just a plane. Alright, so that's good. Let's go ahead and we can do a couple things. We can, I'm just thinking what would be the best way. Let's go ahead and go to the brush palette maybe. Let's just tweak it from the brush palette. And let's go to the modifiers. And here on the modifiers we have a few things that we can do to enhance this curve. So if let's turn off this tree part, because we have only one polygroup, and these three parts only work if you have 3 different polygroups. The weld point is pretty important because that's the one that allows us to weld these points together. So with this enabled, if I just click on this, it should weld these points, but I'm also doing stretching. So now you can see it is kind of welding some of the points, right? So the top and bottom are not welding together, so we can just enable 3 part, and that should do the trick. But if not, we can just do that later on. Another thing is to increase the resolution of the curve, and that allows us to play around a little bit more, and that also fixes that the splitting here. So that's good. That's what we wanted. So with that out of the way, we can save that if we want to. I'm just going to skip that step, and I'm going to go to our scene, and with this mesh, the dummy mesh selected, what I'll do is I'm going to click somewhere here around the card, at the back of the card, and I'm going to create like a strip of polygons, something like that. Alright, very simple. And here on the stroke palette we can also enable lock start, and I'm going to leave the end as it is, but the start allows us to just move this one closer to the card, for example. So I'm going to place this one closer to the wheel, like that, and maybe also lock the end as well, and we can just start playing with this curve to place it a little bit better. Alright, now we need to increase this size a little bit, and this is kind of helping us to define the flow of these particles that we're gonna add. And that's what Nanomesh really is. It's like it's kind of like the particle system of ZBrush. So let's just reduce this a tiny bit more. So as you can see, when I hover over this line, over this curve, the cursor is changing to the green one, or to this bluish one, and this is the one that determines the influence of the curve. But if I go out and select just a different brush size, I'm just going to increase it so that we have more like that, more a bigger polygon. I'm just going to start with that and just click somewhere outside, and I'm going to bring in the Gizmo 3D. I'm going to hold Control, and I'm going to duplicate this bit as well, and I'm just going to try to place this kind of like in the other, on the other side, but not really, just somewhere there. Alright, so now that we have these two, I want to make sure that they are separate, so I'm going to click with Ctrl and Shift to isolate it, and then I can just split hidden. So now we have this set of these guides on its own. We can bring in the the polyframe. These have some creasing, so we can just uncrease all if we want to. Let's just go to the geometry palette and go to crease, and let's click on crease, and that way we remove that creasing. And now let's bring the C-Modeler brush, and I just want to create C-Modeler, BZM, and I'm going to create a kind of like an edge loop that goes in the middle. So hover over the edge, make sure insert is enabled, single edge loop. I'm going to create, whoops, this is good that it happened so that I can show you how to fix it. So this is creating only one split edge here. That means that these edges are not connected. So if I subdivide this is what we get. That's not good. A really quick and easy fix will be to just use the well points together, and that is something that you'll have on the Modify palette or Modify topology. Just click on well points, and let's try that again. Now that is fixed. Alright, so that way we have more polygons in here, or more polygons. And another thing I want to do is maybe go to the move brush. I'm going to start modifying this just to increase the size of these polygons here at the back, or at the back of these curves. Another thing we can do is auto group everything, so we have two different groups, and maybe we can use the move topology so that we don't change this as much. I mean, when we move one, we don't change or affect the other one. And let's go ahead and bring everything together, and I'm just going to push this one closer to the car, like so. And I think we're pretty much ready. What I want to do now is divide this so we have more polygons. Just expand this a little bit more, or spread it apart, right? And now that we have this, it is really easy to just go ahead and place some of the or place the little spheres that we created for the dirt, or whatever is being displaced by the car drifting. So let's go ahead and turn off polyframe. We can go into solo mode just for now, and we can go ahead and bring in the C-Modeler again, BZM. And no, actually we don't need the C-Modeler. We can just select the brush that we created, which is this one, which is a C-Modeler. And let's go ahead and hover over the face. Is that the one? Hang on a second. No, this is the one. Hover over the face, make sure that insert nanomesh is enabled, which if you create a nanomesh brush by default it should be. And let's go ahead and click on all polygons so that we drag this nanomesh to all of these polygons that we see in this subtool. So I'm going to click and drag. This has subdivision level. Let's go ahead and delete lower. Let's do that again, and we have this. So obviously this doesn't look very good, but it is the start of this step. So now let's go ahead and go to the Nanomesh palette. And first I want to randomize. I don't want to one of these spheres. I don't want a sphere per each one of the faces. So the first thing I want to do is click on this random distributor, and then we can distribute this randomly, right? Then we can play with the size as well, and we can click on fill or fit, sorry, and just scale it, and you'll see maybe the fill one is better. Now I'm thinking there's a little thing that maybe I should have considered. Let me just turn off this and I'll show you what I mean in a second. So right now we don't have a very consistent set of of polygons. So if I use the fill or the fit, well, the fill really is gonna put a sphere in each one of these squares, but because we're stretching the squares, it's not gonna be a consistent sphere. So I'm just gonna do a quick ZBrush on this, and I just go into half and keep remeshing this to reduce the polygon count. And that is pretty much what we had, but the distribution of the polygons is a little bit better. So you'll see the difference now. Let's go ahead and click and drag again to create them. Go to fill, and you'll see some areas are a bit stretchy, but it's fine. Let's go now, turn off polyframe, and let's increase the random distribution, and we can increase the size like that, and also maybe that is too much. Reduce that a bit, and we can play with the rotation, and we can also play with this width, length, and the height as well. And just changing these values here, we can randomize them as well, so they're not all of the same size. Alright, that still doesn't look great, but again, this is just part of the step. Let's go ahead and maybe let's just leave it like that, and let's turn off this show placement. So now we only see these spheres, right? And that is kind of what we want. So now we can go back to the move topological brush, and we can move these things around, and we are actually moving the placement of these nanomesh, not the actual spheres. So if we stretch the polygons, you'll see we're changing this on the fly. So this is really, really powerful, because again, we're just moving the placement of these spheres. And if we go closer to this area where kind of like with these smaller ones are starting to be created, we can very easily hold the shift key, for example, and then just smooth everything out, and that will reduce as well the size of the polygons. So let me just turn the placement so you can see what I'm doing. We can also go to the brush palette, hold shift to access the smooth brush, and here in the brush palette we have a series of modifiers just for the smooth brushes, like this one here. So by default, the 3 minimum connected points is enabled, so that's why pardon me, that's why we cannot subdivide the edges. So if you want to subdivide, smooth out the edges. So if you want to smooth these edges, just change this to 1, and now we should be able to just, maybe with less intensity, we should be able to just reduce this dramatically. Alright, I think that is looking good. We can increase the size of this nanomesh actually a little bit more, so it feels like a little bit more connected. I just want to push these ones down a bit. I'm going to bring in the entire composition so that we can see what is actually happening. I feel like we should rotate, we should rotate this a little bit higher like that. And I'm just really here thinking about the composition itself. Alright, and we can now just use the move brush to push things down if we need to, or up. Okay, and once you're happy, you can just leave this one, kind of like get rid of the placement. And if you feel like there's certain areas that you can tweak more, you can just do it manually. You can try fit again, but another thing you can do is just create a nanomesh and then just get rid of the ones that you don't want. So I'm gonna do that, but just before I do that, I'm gonna duplicate this entire subtool. So duplicate, and we have about 10 more minutes, so I'm gonna finish this really quickly and answer any questions that you have, and hopefully that I can clear those out. So with these ones, with the second set of nanomesh of particles, what I want to do, I'm going to go into solo mode. I want to reduce the size and create like smaller particles, obviously. Now we can go into solo, and we can bring in this gizmo. So those are just smaller bits and pieces, but we can decrease the size a bit, but we can increase the random distribution so we have more of those. Not too many, but again, if you want to just place this a little bit better, all we have to do is use the move brush to do this type of thing. Okay, so very easy. You have a series of dirt or whatever that is being dragged by the car. I feel like if we go to the base, I can just push this up a little bit so that it feels like the car is actually coming down from a hill or something, and that will help sort of close this gap in the composition a little bit more. That is thinking that I'm gonna, the final shot would be this from this angle. Alright, so let's go ahead and convert this nanomesh. So I'm gonna select this first, convert this nanomesh into mesh. So I'm gonna go to the inventory and click on 1 to mesh. So now this is actual mesh. Let's select the tiny ones, do the same thing, 1 to mesh. Oh, whoops. Did I do it? Hang on a second. Oh, yeah. So once you create the 1 to mesh, it's gonna create the actual geometry, but it's also gonna make the placement visible. So we just need to hide that or delete that. I'm gonna select this cube as well. I'm gonna hold Control and Shift, invert the selection, and I'm just gonna delete hidden. So now we don't have that dummy geometry anymore. Select this one again, hold Control and Shift to select that, and instead of deleting it, I'm just gonna split it, and I'm gonna hide it because I might use that. I don't know, I like to keep things sometimes. I'm gonna turn it off, shoot it to the top. There you go. For this one, I won't do that. I'm gonna select that and hold Control and Shift to select that, invert that, invert it, and I think we hit it. Now let's go ahead and delete hidden. Cool. So now with the move topological, we can go ahead and do some refinements because some of these one looks too squash. So you can do this type of thing, or you can bring in the smooth brush and start doing the same thing. If you want to smooth only one, you can hold the smooth brush. You can hold Shift to access the smooth brush and go to the brush palette. And here we have under the auto masking palette here, you can click on this mask by polygroup and set it to 100%, and that way it will respect the polygroups. Right now we have the same polygroup, but that's a very easy fix. We just go to auto groups, and we have a bunch of polygroups. We can turn that off, select a different material, and now if we hold Shift, we just smooth out just one single mesh, right? And because we have the move topological, we can just go ahead and manually tweak all of these meshes individually, which they're not too many, so it's just a good practice to be able to tweak this and get something more intentional than just this random distribution. So this is what I really like about working with ZBrush, that it allows you to have a lot of freedom in terms of the things that you can make, and it also has a bunch of automated tools that allows you to create these type of things really quickly, but then also gives you the ability to manually tweak them so that you have control over your scene and to to make things that look more intentional. Alright, so I'm just gonna start placing these ones with a larger brush size, moving them around so that they don't look kind of like in the same place. So that also helps kind of like to see that it helps with, I don't know, it helps with the flow of the composition, I guess. They kind of serve as a little particles that have been shooting off in the direction of this car's direction of the drifting. Alright, so that's it. I'm gonna go ahead and paint this really quickly. We have about 10 more minutes. I keep increasing the time, but I just wanted to show you one more thing that I think is gonna be really cool. So let's go ahead and select a color for this. Would be this one, a lighter color as well, more saturated. Fill object. I'm gonna quick save this. No. All right. Well, you saw that it was a cool scene. Hopefully this gives you ideas. But that's it. So abnormal termination. That's it for me. let's go ahead and see if it saved a quick save. Alright, I'm gonna launch it once more, see if it saved anything at all. If it didn't, I'm sure you recognize that it was a good scene. If it did, I'll just show you that last bit, because that's annoying. So it did save something. Just gonna create a new document, make it gray. That was close, so not too bad. All we did was lose that polypaint, so let's just do that really quickly again. We lost the custom brushes and I didn't save them, but that's alright, not a big deal. They're really easy to redo in case you want them. So I'm gonna select something like this color again, fill object, and then I select something lighter, and we can use this brush maybe with the color spray and just add a bit more of this. I'm gonna also go closer to the white color so that it's kind of more like a combination of the dirt being displaced by this car, but also a mix of, you know, some general dust, or maybe the exhaust of the car is also coming into play here. Alright, so I think we are ready to move on. I'm happy with this. I think the particles are maybe too big, so I'm gonna select them and just use the inflate to just decrease those. Some of them are not behaving properly, so what I can do instead is inflate everything first. Then I can run a polish to all of those just to polish them a little bit so they're more like rounded, and then I can just deflate them again. So alright, that makes a little bit more sense. Cool. So just to wrap up, this is the final scene. I just want to show you an extra trick that has to do, like if you were doing this exact same scene, but instead of being a dry track, it is quite muddy. I just want to show you a way to create that mud and how to add it to the car, for example. So it's really simple. So I'm going to select the car. Actually, we don't need to select the car. We can just do it in a separate subtool. Let's go ahead and append a C-sphere. Go down to the bottom. And in case you didn't know, the difference between insert and append is that if you click append, it will append any tool or anything that you selected to the bottom. But if you click insert, it's just going to put it below the selected subtool that you have. Let me just check the chat really quickly. Alright, cool. So select the C-sphere. I don't know what the C-sphere is. Let's just push it down so we can see where it is located. And now that we have this C-sphere, we can do something called, or use something called the C-sketch, and it will respect whatever geometry that we have visible. So in other words, all we need to have is a C-sphere, but then we can place the C-sketch anywhere. So with that C-sphere selected, we can scroll down to this C-sketch, and you'll notice that these are a bunch of palettes that are only, or that are unique to the C-spheres. So you won't have them if you select something else. So let's go ahead and click on Edit Sketch, and we should have. Hang on a second. C-sketch. It's not allowing me to do that. I must have done something. C-sketch. Edit C-sketch. Ah, alright. So let me just do that again. Of course. So if I edit a sketch, I can start sketching, but you see that my brush is kind of like grayed out, and that is because I currently have the move brush selected. So just make sure that you have in the draw mode, and as soon as you do that, you have the brush. So now I can just go ahead and start doing these type of things around the car, right? And then I can just use the smooth brush to smooth it, and those are just like little bits and pieces. We can just reduce the brush size as well. Some mud around the tire, and this is pretty rough. I'm not gonna use this anyway, but just to give you an idea of how something else that you can do. I'm just gonna place some bits and pieces here that the cars has sort of been collecting, or maybe we can use it, I don't know. Alright, so this is a bunch of mod collected by this car. You can reduce the brush size a bit more. And this is just painting all around, but this is actual, I mean, you can turn this into actual geometry, so it is pretty cool. So obviously here there's going to be heaps of this mod. But anyway, you get the idea. So you can have the freedom to just paint with geometry really with this sketch. All you need is a C-sphere. So now that I have this ready, what I can go ahead and do is go into solo mode, just so that we can see only this. And let's go to the Unify skin, and we can click on this preview, and here we have the resolution. So I'm going to reduce the resolution quite a bit, and click preview, and that is not a lot of resolution. So yeah, so let's just increase the resolution, click preview. So that's a little bit better, and I think that one will work just fine. So with that resolution, let's turn the preview off and click modify, make unified skin, sorry, and then we have this set of this mesh here, which is just a Dynamesh really. So we can assign a polygroup, and a couple things we can do to clean this up is just to run a polish, just a quick polish pass, and then we can go ahead and copy this from the subtool list. Copy, go to the car. We have this, so we can keep adding sketching or turn it off. So I can just turn this off, shoot it to the top, and let's go ahead and go here and click paste. Get out of solo mode, and we have now some geometry that we can play around with. So I can just use the move brush, to just or the smooth brush and the move brush to just refine this a little bit. And that would be just the mod, or maybe even more of the, I don't know what this could be, but I mean I would use it for creating kind of like something stuck on this other geometry like mod, but you can just use it for a bunch of different things. Alright, so if that is kind of like mod, it would have to be like a darker area of this. So we can get out of this polyframe or turn it off, and then select the same color, but it would be probably darker and more saturated, right? And let's fill that object, and that's it. So that is pretty much the scene. We can just do a quick render. Let me just do some final tweaks here for the render palette. Select my light, just move it to the side or even on this side, and let's click render. Let's do a quick save. Don't touch the screen. It's all good. Let's do BPR, and that is our scene for today, guys. So I'm gonna just answer some questions if you have any. Hopefully, I will be able to help you with that. And yeah, by the way, if you wanna change this mod is the only one that is sort of sticking out from the low poly scene, so it's not very low polygon. So obviously, what we can do is go to the transform palette. The plugin palette, going to the deformation, pre-process current. You can also duplicate it in case you don't like that. And after you process that, you can reduce this significantly to 2% decimate current, and that is just gonna change that to this very low poly. So let's fill object. That's it. It's as simple as that. If you don't like that, you can use the blowy one, but I'm going for this low poly. So I think this one is a good. It's a good indication of the car being dragged some mud along the way. Alright, so let's do another render, and here we go. That's it for now. Hopefully, I know some of the things that I show you are quite basic, and the workflows become a little bit repetitive at some point, but hopefully there is some golden nuggets in here that you can use in your own workflow. So let me know if you have any questions now on the chat. Let me just check what the Pixel guy said. 1 hour and a half. So, alright, so I can do like 5-minute questions, last minute questions if you guys have any, and then I will wrap it up here. So let me just check the chat. You don't texture in Substance Painter? I mean, this is solo poly, right? Sure, yeah. So again, the idea of these streams is called, that's why it's called Make It Happen in ZBrush. So the idea is to do everything in ZBrush. and show you that the ZBrush actually has capabilities to do pretty much everything. I mean, other tools, more specialized tools for texturing like Substance Painter are going to be obviously better for creating more specific texture, but you can totally create a very good looking texture in ZBrush. So that is the whole point. But I do texture in Substance Painter when I'm depending on the workflow that I'm doing. This is a low poly scene that I think it's pretty easy to do it in ZBrush, so why not do it in ZBrush? Surface noise, please. I wouldn't add surface noise. I think the surface noise in this case for this particular scene will kind of like break the illusion of that low poly scene, so I'm going to stay away from that. Hi from Jamaica. Hi Jose, Hase cover. This piece reminds me of my Nintendo days in 1992. Yeah, that's good. That's good. If kind of like, I think that low polys have that, tend to evoke that type of feeling of like nostalgia of like old graphics. So we're doing the full circle. Now we have like these AAA games that are absolutely ridiculous in the way that they're displayed, but we tend to have this nostalgia for this type of images, and I think that's part of what I did this. I saw something, I don't remember where or what exactly was, but I thought I want to do this. I want to do some like low poly scene, and if you check my portfolio and the things that I share online, this is something that I've never done, and that's why I also like to do it in these sessions, so that it sort of pushes me out of my comfort zone and see how I can apply certain tools and certain processes to, you know, different areas, and hopefully in that process help you out as well. So let's check out the chat. I always learn something new in Pablo's live stream. Great, glad to hear that, Francisco. That is essentially the point of this. I'm really glad to hear that. Man, this is crazy. A full low poly scenes made in ZBrush. Yeah, that's another good point. Like ZBrush is capable of doing lots of things, and that's why what I wanted to focus on the C modeler brush for this and the path stream. So the path stream is more focused on the C modeler. In this one we used it a little bit, but it was more about the polypaint and setting up the scene and all that. All you need is a C-sphere. Exactly. Change the mod material. I'm not going to worry too much about the mod material or the speculars or anything. This is not going to be the final render. If I wanted to do this, turn this into a more nicer portfolio piece, I will probably fix the textures first, and I can just render this as a final thing as a final presentation image in Keyshot, and I can change the materials there. So I'm gonna not do that right now. Basic is always the key. Yeah. So I think that's it. No more questions unless you have any, but I think that's it for the chat. So thank you so much, guys, for stopping by. I'm also gonna chat with the Pixology guys and see. I think I'm gonna be able to embed some of these recording sessions in the ZBrush Guides website. So the ones that I do, so that if I just for the purpose of searchability and being able to refer you guys back to it. So if they're all living within the same page, they're all available in the Pixology channel, in the ZBrush Live, and in YouTube and all that. But if I manage to embed them in a single page within the ZBrush Guides, for example, I can just refer to them a bit easier, because they're only the ones that I'm talking about, or the ones that I know that I talked about. So we'll see if that happens, and I'll let you guys know in the social media. Other than that, I'll see you next week. This is the end of this little scene, and next week we'll probably start with something else. Again, I want to try to keep this as much variety as possible into this stream. So maybe next time we can do something completely different, depending on the brush or the process or the tool that you want me to use. If anything else fails, the good default back to would be just creature stuff, which is what I like to do, creature and character. All right. So I'll see you guys. Hang on a second. Can you show the render in Keyshot in your side? Yeah. I'll place this as a final shot, and I'll place it somewhere. All right. So I'll see you guys in the next week with something completely new. And stick around, because I think Sebastian is up next if you have time. All right, guys. I'll see you next week. Cheers.